Welcome to a presentation of XLValidator, the application presented by SimCon Software. I'm going to open up this sample file here, and we're going to take a look at XLValidator, which is a plugin to Excel. There is no database backend. It is a local install, and it's designed specifically to help engineers or design folks involved with spreadsheets to be able to go through either design and build or design, build, and validation. And as you might guess, the name XLValidator fits in very well. And this is focused specifically on Excel. And as you can see, XLValidator is a plugin to Excel. There's a number of different features involved with XLValidator, all of them either based on logic analysis, documentation, or reporting out. So I'm going to share with you just a few of the examples of each of that, and then we will conclude this presentation. So where we like to start with is formula mapping. Formula mapping is very easy. Basically, we're looking to have the application to assemble a review of all the formulas of like kind on this particular sheet. So when I run this feature, it brings me back a legend where it has assembled, again, like kind. So as an example here, we have some formulae of like kind, and that lights up the very first one that it's organized here. And as you use these arrow indicators, you can click through and you can see that each of these is a sum. Now, just above that, we have a couple different cells that are grouped in a different formulae. And if we click on those, we can see there's an average and then again a second average. Now, these two, just from a visual perspective, are also column, essentially at the base of a column. And you might expect that these averages, could that be an incorrect formulae? Should it be sum versus average? Well, of course, that depends on your design, but this is where XLValidator excels, if I may use the pun, because it brings your eye directly to locations, whether you're looking at this legend over here. Simply just reviewing this makes your eye wonder, is everything as it's supposed to be? So that's an example of formula mapping. Formula analysis and cell analysis are very similar. Let me just do formula analysis. And formula analysis is where we have specific criteria, just as we would with cell analysis. Here you can select all or some of these criteria, all focused on formulae. If you're not quite clear on something, you can always use the help menu to get a nice orientation in terms of that criteria. Color legends are provided so that once again it helps your eye go directly to a location. So I've got a few of these, I think 4 or so criteria that I'm going to search into this sheet on. When I go to OK, that's going to give me another legend. And you can see here, I was searching for formulae with constants. So it's very easy just to click through and make sure that the constants that you expected to see are accurate and there. Here we see a negatively defined formulae that was picked up. Down here at this bottom, at the end of this column K, you'd think, well, is that the way the build is supposed to be with a negative sign? Or was that perhaps by mistake slipped in there? So the application can help you. A very common one is text cell references. Here we see some text has slipped in place of a numeric value, and that's impacted here in terms of the value as well as over here at the end of that row. So once again, just our way of helping you with a visual analysis to be able to do dives into the sheets or into the workbooks themselves. Now, the application has a specialized print function. So if I want to print a wholly complete workbook specific to this search with the same criteria that I just searched on, you can do that as part of your documentation. So let me go ahead and I'll just save that to my desktop, and you'll get an idea of what that might look like. So if you've ever tried to print out an Excel sheet in a viewable format and it happens to be fairly large, you're going to have a lot of challenges doing that in terms of orienting within Excel. But here we have summary, And of course, this is a read-only file, so there is no changes to it. Here is the criteria that I was searching on. And we also give you the ability to actually look at the criteria as it was displayed in this separate read-only workbook. So that's just one example of the kind of documentation. So I did want to share that with you because that specialized print function is extremely helpful in terms of documenting your process. We had mentioned heat map and workbook analysis as checkpoints. Let's go ahead and look at the workbook analysis. You can do that with Excel or PDF. And here we break out criteria into sections such as formula, cell, formula warnings, hidden information, and structural analysis. So once again, here with this tool, you can go a little deeper and you can do selected worksheets or the entire workbook itself. So when I run that, I'm going to get again a wholly separate workbook, which can be part of your checklist, part of your documentation. And as an example, what it does is it lists all of the criteria that I just searched on. So it doesn't give me that legend, but it gives me a very nice view into anything that I want to take a deeper dive into that can be a criteria within what I just shared with you within those different segments of the workbook analysis format. So you can see down below, I've just got a series of criteria. Once again, it highlights all the information. It's a read-only file, and you have tabs down at the bottom that you can browse and search within. So workbook analysis and the specification document along with the heat map, these are good documentation that can take place as you're moving through your process. Now I'm going to finish up this brief presentation of XLValidator with a review of an IQOQ document. So both of these, the spec document and the IQOQ, these are the third value add, and they are the Word templates built into the application, reusable Word templates that can help you at any time you want to extrapolate information into a pre-formatted Word document from which you can do your final checks and reviews. So if we click on IQOQ, what we get is also something similar to the workbook analysis, but these are now considered test cases. You can then select any and each of these as you need to have in your IQOQ. And when you say OK to that, that's going to begin the process of moving the data directly from the workbook into this templated document. I'm not going to go through that right now. What I'd like to do is simply browse up to the sample reports. Here I have an example of an IQOQ right here. So when I click and open that up, basically you see cover pages at the front end, you see confirmation pages at the back end. You see things like signature pages, confidentiality, table of contents. All of these are controlled by your organization, whereas where the actual data from the spreadsheet arrives into specific column-based criteria, we control that, although we certainly can customize this document if need be. So let's go down to the operational qualification, and we get to our first test case. So this is information that was, if I had run that, what I'd shown you just a few seconds ago, you would have seen a test case being delivered into this templated document. We have a test case number, a name, a procedure, a description. And then here is the actual information where we brought it out, listing the step, the sheet, the cell address, the formula, the cell value. And now, of course, the actual results need to be verified by your validation person or engineer. Were there any deviations? Were the acceptance criteria met? An initial and date, and you move on to the next one. So all the test cases follow this approximate value, or at least this approximate process, I should say. And of course, the columns themselves, depending on the type of data, will vary. And at each and every test case at the bottom, you have a comment and observation section. And at the very end of the document, you have pages where you can apply as many screenshots as you would like. Here's another example of a test case where we're listing protections. So again, very important if you're building in protections into your into your soon-to-be production spreadsheet, you want to be able to verify those in your IQOQ. Conditional formatting, very common. If you do utilize conditional formatting, you would use this as a test case. If not, you wouldn't, of course. Continuing on, here's an example where we can take the VB code, bring it into this document, and you can do your final checks and reviews. Distinct formulae, I'll finish up with this one. Many times there's many formulas which is in a production build of a spreadsheet, but there might only be a certain smaller number of distinct formulae. This particular test case allows you to verify that each and every distinct formula is working as expected, and thus we're helping you to sidestep having to validate every single formula in your workbook. So this is an example of exporting test cases to an IQOQ and the third value set when it comes to XLValidator. I hope this has been helpful for you, and thank you very much for taking the time to review this presentation.